And I'm gonna let the folks that are in the wings come in, and we'll wait for Shannon and David. We'll start soon. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Oops. Make this big again so I can see everyone.
I'm glad I got my coffee because I start to like go downhill in the afternoon. I'm like, ooh, it's nap time.
I know, and I keep messing. I try to put the paper where I can see it, not to have extra screens. Thanks to all the guests who are joining us. We're just letting people have a chance to get logged in. I know sometimes going to the link, the extra step takes a minute. We're really excited about doing this panel and having travelers share, and we'll take your questions, and we have travel providers here, so hopefully we all can learn something and be inspired to be better travelers all around.
Okay. Well, we'll wait just a couple more minutes, April. I think we can probably wait till like 4 or 5 after, and then we'll start doing introductions, and we'll talk about that and what we're doing here tonight. And then hopefully everyone will be here. We have late arrivals. So.
May the internet gods be with us tonight, as we always say.
Oh, please. Yeah, I've had intermittent problems the last couple of times we've been on. So,
well, the winds have really started here this afternoon. So I know something's coming through, and it's probably pushing towards Colorado. So I heard they're supposed to get hammered with like 20 inches of snow over the next day or two.
And I'm glad you said something. I'm going to make you co-host, April. I don't always remember to do that. Let me do that.
That's probably a good idea.
In case I get dropped off, or you know,
we can keep the ball rolling, right?
Yes.
Or chat if we have to watch chat. Depends how things come in.
All right.
Good point.
All right. Well, wait one more minute. I was going to say I'll start, but we'll wait.
No, wait.
We need one of those like Jeopardy music.
Yeah, the little
countdown music. Yeah. Thanks, Sheila.
I know, because I know there's some regulars and I don't see them quite yet. So I got a few messages, but
all right. Well, we hit 404, so let's just at least start talking a little bit about what we're doing, and then we can start doing the introductions, and then if our additional panelists join, we'll introduce them as well. So welcome, everybody. This is our very first group discussion event like this that we've done. We have a few more scheduled for the rest of the year. What we want to do with this event is talk to travelers and travel providers about what it's like to travel as a solo traveler with a group experience, whether that is going with a small group tour, but there's other people, or stepping in and going for a long tour, 5 to 10 days with another group, and how that feels, what you think about when you go, if you've ever felt those experiences when you don't feel included. We'll talk about when you do feel included, and our hope is that the end of this we'll have some tips and suggestions that we can share with our audience. But we're hoping that we'll have tips for both sides, tips for travelers on how they can prepare and get their mind in the right place when they join a group like this, as well as tips for our travel and tour providers so that they set up their tour to allow solo travelers to feel included and do everything they can to make that work. So that's our goal. We'll probably do that as a blog post. We are recording tonight's event so we can share it with the rest of our group who's not able to join at this time. We've got a panel of somewhere around 6 to so people. I'll let April do the introductions and start that. We're super excited about that.
Great. So thanks everyone for joining us. We'll have some people joining late, but I'm going to go ahead and start by having the travelers on our travel panel introduce themselves, and I'll start with Barb. So Barb, if you want to give us your name, which I already gave out there, and answer the question, do you travel often as a solo traveler with group tours?
Okay. My name is Barb Siegel, and I just got back from, is it working?
Yes.
There's two Barbs.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
we're
I'm
talking
sorry,
to the other
Barbara.
Barb. Sorry,
Oh,
We're
Barb.
talking to, yeah, we're just doing Barb, who's on the travel
the panel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Barbara.
No, that's okay. Not an issue.
I'm Barb Hebert. I'm from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I have a confession to make. I am looking at all your noses and counting the days until I can take this dumb bandage off. So I'm really envious of all your nice noses at this point in time. I have had a couple of tours with April to Alaska, and I've done some other solo traveling. I've also traveled with a bunch of boys up to Canada, which was fun, but quite different than April's tours. I realized this time that I have, in addition to my nose, which doesn't count, I had some arthritis problems, and I didn't feel like I was able to do everything that the younger tour members did. April was very accommodating, so I really didn't feel like I wasn't part of a group, but I had to really analyze my skills and decide what I could do and what I couldn't do. So I think that's what I was supposed to answer.
Thank you, Barb. That was very thorough. Leslie, who's on the traveler panel.
Hi.
Hi.
I've been traveling solo for, I guess, probably the last 10 years. And I generally do go by myself without knowing a soul and enter various different groups. There are a couple that I've gone with repeatedly because I do like their approach. Started out with April also, I mean, doing local things. But the other ones I've gone a variety of international places, and I do have some feelings of what I thought was especially workable and not. But so yeah, I up until COVID, I was doing like 2 trips a year.
Nice. Thank you, Leslie. And Donna. Unmute yourself. And you can leave yourself unmuted since you're on the panel, Donna.
Okay, so I was going to say I'm probably a little bit of a hybrid here because I've been traveling solo since about 1982 when I went to Europe in college. And then in 2017, I became a tour director. And so now I lead tours and I also still travel solo. So I kind of see it from both sides, which has been really interesting because I think it changes my perspective sometimes.
Great, wonderful. And we've got Shannon who's joined us. Shannon, you'll need to unmute yourself. We've got you.
Yeah, here, let me start my video real quick. Hi there.
Thank you, Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon. Sorry, I'm finishing cooking dinner and also getting over COVID, so I sound a little bad. Yeah, I missed the original question. Could you repeat it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course. Introduce yourself and then to share if you travel often as a solo traveler with group tours.
Awesome. So, hi, I'm Shannon. I travel solo and I travel with my husband, and I have joined a few group tours over the years, but I've actually, after spending years traveling solo and traveling the world with my husband and joining a few group tours, I decided that I wanted to start running my own group tours to kind of fill in the gaps that I was seeing in some of the tours that I was joining. They were just a little too big for me or too many people in them. So I wanted to run smaller setting group tours with less people. That felt a little more intimate. So that is what I do now. And I met April through the Travel Collective, and I'm happy to be here having these conversations with other women who absolutely love to travel. So.
Thank you, Shannon. Wonderful. So now on our travel provider panel, I'd like to introduce Sheila. So Sheila, introduce yourself and share, do you often have solo travelers on your tours?
Oh, we can't hear you, Sheila.
Sheila, I can't.
Am I?
There
Oh,
you go.
it is.
Now we can hear you.
that was weird.
It was,
Yeah,
I
it was
unmuted.
weird.
Anyway, I'm Sheila Stone, and I have a company called Sheila Stone Tours. And I have done a lot of solo traveling, and usually people on my tours, usually they come by themselves. So basically I end up with a group of solo travelers
right.
and we become cohesive, hopefully, as we do the tour. I've also done a lot of solo traveling, and just recently I joined a group as a solo traveler, and that was an experience. Okay.
That's wonderful, Sheila, because I think your conversation and myself, I've had instances too. I think that's why kind of precipitated this a little bit. So Cindy and I are happy to have this conversation tonight. And I believe David's running a little late. So I think Cindy will go ahead and maybe get started with the prepared questions.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. And then if David joins, we'll pause and have him introduce himself, because he's a travel provider, and as you can see, we're female dominated here on the screen. So we have
and our
bring in a
travel
different
collective,
perspective.
right? We kind of want a different perspective, so we're excited that David would join us. So
yeah. So we really want to hear his point of view too, because it's a little bit different, I think, from that aspect. Okay, so we'll start with the first question, and we're going to ask the same question of everyone. I'll just spin it a little bit differently for the travel provider. So I'm going to start with you, Sheila, and just ask it that way. And I think you can answer it on either side, which is, tell us about a moment when you felt included with the group or part of the group, or something you witnessed as a tour provider. Just a personal little story, a moment. It doesn't have to be a specific tour. We're not necessarily looking for that. Just a time when you felt included.
Well, as a tour provider, my last trip to Japan was a real mixed bag. There were 6 of us, and with the exception of one couple, everybody else didn't know each other prior to the tour, and the age range ranged from 30 to 72.
Wow.
So it was really a mixed bag, but everybody really became cohesive. It became a really good group. Everyone felt, I think, included. There was one woman, the 72-year-old had some trouble with stairs. There was a lovely Samoan woman who would help her down the stairs every time there were steps. And so, that was a real positive experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great, Sheila. And so then I think I'm just going to go around to the other folks. Donna, you're on my screen next. So I'm going to pick you. And feel free to share it, whether it's as a tour provider or a personal experience where you felt included or saw that people were being included.
Okay, well, I'll start with myself. I think the most included I've felt, because I traveled a lot on group tours prior to this, but probably about 2010, 2015, I don't know, somewhere in there, I went to Ireland on a group tour. Okay. And it was an interesting group because it had a big group from Texas that were all traveling together, and then some random folks. And there were probably, 40 of us in this tour. And there were just a couple of people who literally from the very beginning started talking to me and saying, hey, we're going to go to dinner tonight on our free night. Would you like to go with us? They went out of their way. I'm usually pretty good about, inserting myself because I'm an only child and I've traveled a lot. So I'm usually pretty good, but that was probably the most I'd ever felt like somebody really was reaching out. And I've seen that on my tours where people, there are people who don't want anything to do with people who are by themselves or people they don't know. And then there's other people who are like, oops, I see that person over there and they don't have a friend. I'll go be their friend. The bad thing is when you have a tour where nobody feels like that.
Yeah.
And then you're the one that's trying to be like, okay, well, let's include so-and-so. And I think just as an aside, I find whether I'm on the trip or I'm leading the trip, the most difficult tend to be older men traveling by themselves, being able to integrate within the group.
I can see that. Mhm.
Yeah, they seem to have a really hard time integrating within the group. As a TD, I'm the one that ends up being like their pal, because the other people don't, the single women don't necessarily want to chat them up, and the
Yeah.
families don't think about it. So
Yeah.
they tend to be the ones who I think trying to get the short shrift on that.
Yeah, you're bringing up something that we were told, April and I were told this a couple of years ago, that men are shy away from traveling solo as well. And I thought, God, that's crazy because they don't have the safety concerns that we do as women. But the gentleman that we spoke to said it's really difficult as a man to insert yourself in a crowd, especially if there's women, because women are very shy to allow a single man walk up and talk to them, where it's the opposite for women. We have people will come up, women will talk to us as well as men will talk to us, and sometimes not wanted, but you get that as well. And I didn't realize that men had encountered that. And timing could not be more perfect, David.
Yeah, I was just going to say, welcome, David. So
Thanks. Sorry, I was a little bit late.
no, we so
problem.
appreciate having you here and getting your perspective. So you do provide tours. So the question we asked earlier was, do you often have solo travelers on your tours? And I know you're fairly new to having tours, but if you could share a little bit on that and go ahead and introduce yourself and the name of your company.
Sure. My name's David. My wife and I run a company called Blaze Adventure Tours. So we do adventure travel. That's biking and cycling mostly. We do a lot of multi-day things. We're camping. We're going to cool places. So yeah, we have had some, I'm just changing my name. We have had some solo travelers. It's very, there's a gamut of them. You have people who are the kind of person that can talk to a brick wall and they can fit in anywhere and it's super easy. But you also have people who might be a little bit weird. You know, when I say weird, I feel like I'm pretty weird, but it doesn't fit in with everybody else on the trip. I had one guy who had a speech impediment. He was really shy. And I think it's on the tour provider to make those people feel welcome. Maybe you spend more time with that person. As a tour provider, you have this instant charisma because you're in charge. So when you give attention to someone, other people want that attention and they tend to crowd around you. So as the provider, you have a lot of power to help people feel welcome and to bring people into the group and to squash any cliquey or exclusionary behavior, which I've also seen. But yeah, we actually just had a big trip. It was a group, but there was someone who he had just joined this group. He had never met any of the other 12 people. And so that was an interesting experience. He's also from Germany. So he spoke very good English, but there's a little bit of separation there. One of the things I love about we do, human power travel, you're hiking, you're biking, is that it's really a equalizer. You're all kind of struggling together and sleeping in the dirt and all of these things. And so it doesn't matter. One of the guys on our trip had just sold his company for $400 million. And it doesn't matter if you're him or you're my friend Keith, who's in firefighter school, right? Everyone's kind of doing the same thing. And so it's those kind of shared experiences, I think, that can kind of form a group and bring outsiders into a part of the group. So yeah.
There we go. I think he answered both questions for us, because the question we were asking around was, if you've had that happen to you, or what happens when solo travelers come positive things. So thanks, David. I'm so glad you're here, because it's just a good balance. So where did I leave off? We did Sheila and Donna answered. So let's do Leslie. Leslie, have you gone on a tour, and tell us about a positive moment where you felt included?
I actually had an extremely positive moment just last week. And that was before going on a tour. I leave actually the day after tomorrow for a photo tour to Cuba. And with a group, I know no one. During the course of the pandemic, I watched a webinar that the leader led, and he had done this trip like for 8 years, and I got interested, and they set up a Zoom session with all the participants. So
Nice.
we could see each other and make contact and ask questions. And it was wonderful. I had never had that happen before. And I was so impressed with the organizers for doing it, and really welcomed the opportunity to see who these strange people that I'll be joining, are. So that was really
Good idea.
a
That's
positive experience.
great, Leslie. I love that you have an experience before you've even gone on the trip. That's wonderful. And it breaks down just seeing
It's a
their
good
faces.
sign.
Well, and just seeing their faces, there's a little anxiety that happens as a
Yeah,
solo traveler.
exactly, when you
show
know
up.
not a soul.
Yeah.
And that's always my situation. I don't know anyone. So
Yeah.
this really was lovely.
Got rid of at least that one piece of anxiety. You know what your fellow travelers are going to look like. Wonderful. Thanks, Leslie. Barb, would you like to answer that question? Give us a positive experience that you've had on a group tour when you felt included.
The other Barb, which Barb?
You, Barb.
Because
Oh,
you're on
me.
the panel. You're
You're
the
on
only
the panel.
Barb we're going to refer
Okay.
to, because you
Okay.
agreed to be on the panel.
Okay, well, I have had wonderful experiences where people did help me out also going downstairs. And I think that, as David said, I'm a pretty social person, and I don't have anxiety about meeting people I don't know, but as April can tell you, but I think to keep really in the front of your mind that everybody wants to maybe do different things and spend their trip time doing different things. And so you need to state what you would like to do and what you would not like to do, with the thought of listening to other people and getting a cohesive thing. April tends to build in a lot of flexibility in her tours, which is great. But we as travelers too need to take that responsibility and not just go on something and be grumpy about it.
May I add another positive, if you don't mind me coming back to that, for tours I actually did take?
Please.
I've been with an organization called Country Walkers. I've done numerous trips with them, and they also have people ranging in age and ranging in physical ability. And what I've really appreciated about them is that they will notice if someone is having some kind of physical difficulties or whatever, and they will make adaptations for them. So that kind of flexibility you mentioned before in providing some alternatives and alternative ways of getting to a place safely or doing a slightly different version of the activity, for me was a really wonderful thing that I appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, I think that the flexibility is important, right? Being able to, as a tour provider, being able to adjust a little as you go. And I love that Barb mentioned that to vocalize what you want and what you don't want, and especially as a tour provider, that is something that we ask all the time. And I know we've even vented as a group about it a little bit. Like, we ask, do you have any special needs? Do you need anything? Do you need special food, alert? And then you get on the tour and they're like, oh, I can't, eat whatever. And it's, if I would have known, we wouldn't be at this restaurant. So really so important, to take that responsibility as a traveler, to share not just what you can and can't do, there's that, and then there's what you want to do, like you said, Barbara, and everybody wants a different, everybody's looking for a different type of tour than what you are. I mean, it's just a little slightly slanted. So what you want to do may not be exactly what everybody else wants to do. And you don't have to go on everything, right?
Right.
Right.
And the experience of going something, on my 2 Alaska tours with April, we did some things. We went to the state fair in Denali, and for some of those, the first trip, the weather was rainy and cold. The second trip, it was fine, and then vice versa. On the second trip, it was rainy and cold. And so for everybody to understand, and maybe the tour leader just needs to state this, that one's experience is going to be on the weather, dependent on the weather. And as good as you guys are, I don't think you can control that yet.
No.
So just to be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have Shannon.
We have
hasn't
Shannon, yes.
answered this question yet. So Shannon, would you like to answer that question for us?
Sure. Sorry. I'm, like I said, I'm getting over COVID, so I'm coughing a lot, which is why I just like have myself muted and stuff. So I just returned from my tour that I led to Spain about a week ago. Caught COVID on the plane, unfortunately. But one of the times that I felt really included as a tour guide was actually something really small. It was that, you know, I spent all this time focusing as a tour guide on, are these people having a good time? Are we getting from place to place on time? Are we, you know, prepped for the next tour, the next local guide that we meet with, all of the odds and ends? And but I also take photos of all my travelers for them and send them the photos of them at the end of the trip. And so I spent a lot of the trip taking photos of the group, but towards the end of the tour, all of the travelers were like, no, you need to be in these photos with us. And it was nice to feel included on that side too, because you as a tour operator, you do spend so much time, you know, focusing on the needs of others. And so for the people on the tour to want you to also be in their memories is kind of nice, you know. They're like, no, we want you to actually be in the photo with us. So I really enjoyed that. But as on my own, as I've joined group tours, I'm pretty social. I'm actually extremely social. So I think I feel naturally included because I kind of forced myself into that gap. But I know that I went on a group tour to Mauritania last year in Northwestern Africa, and it was really nice. On the first night, they did like a meet and greet, and everyone goes like, hey, let's go get dinner together as like a separate thing. And so that like first dinner where everyone made a decision to spend time together made everyone feel very included, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that was stimulated by the travelers, right?
Yeah, it was started by the travelers. So
yeah, I'm trying to make some notes so we can kind of take away something here. And one of the things that I've heard here, Donna started us with, was that the travelers reaching out to other travelers makes a huge difference. And, you know, whether it's asking you to join the picture or just going out to a meal, that just can make all the difference in the world to a solo traveler.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things that a tour guide almost can't.
Yes.
They can help initiate, but it's the people that are on your tour. Maybe some of it is the type of people that you attract to your tours. It sounds like everybody is attracted to tours where people are, they are attracting people who want to get to know each other, who want to like reach out and help each other down the stairs or get to know each other. And that says a lot about the tour itself too, the type of people who sign up for it.
Yeah. Well, let's go the other direction. I'll see if we covered everybody, right, April? You
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
okay.
no, I think we
ask
did
the
cover
next
everything.
question.
Yeah,
go back
sure.
Let's do that.
Yeah, so we're gonna go the other direction now and have each of you tell us about a moment when you didn't feel included or part of the group, or you've witnessed it, whether it was a personal experience that you had taking a tour or as a leader that you witnessed something. And we all know, you know, as tour providers and tour guides, as Shannon touched on, sometimes we're so busy with the nuts and bolts, it's hard to, you know, see it in time to make adjustments, but we'd like to get everyone's input. So I think we started with Sheila. So why don't we go back and start with Sheila again?
Hey, yes, I just did a tour, a 10-day boat trip. And by boat trip, I was saying cruise for a while and everyone was going, you did a cruise? And it was basically, I changed the thing to 6 old ladies on a boat, which is basically what it was. It was 6 women around my age, and it was our boat, and there were 3 berths, so you shared a berth, and we were that way for 10 days. Everybody knew everybody else. Everybody else was a boat person. except me. And I sort of ended up on it at the last minute. And let's just say it was less than ideal. A couple of the people were friendly. There were no one was really unfriendly, but there's a difference between unfriendly and not friendly. And I'm pretty outgoing. So it was, let's just put it this way. I couldn't wait to get off the boat at the end.
Yeah. Hey, and could you say, Sheila, that you felt more awkward than, like it was just awkward? I think that's how I feel when I don't feel included. I'm just, because you weren't upset. People weren't being mean to you or really.
No one was being mean.
Rude, right? It was just.
There was one woman who had a chip on her shoulder.
Okay.
But she also could be very, very nice. So, and she was kind of like that to, not just to me. That was sort of in general. Except for the people that she really knew well, and she was always fine to them. But like there was one woman who she was really funny and interesting, and I would have liked to have gotten to know her, and just was like, I got friends. She wasn't interested. And there was one evening, because you're on a small boat,
right?
And I went and sat out in the lounge with everybody else and realized that everyone was talking, but there was no way for me to kind of be included. And I finally ended up going back to my berth and read a book. Thank goodness for Kindles.
Yeah, and I can vouch that you're super outgoing. I don't know
I'm pretty outgoing.
No, but I mean, as an introvert, I just my heart is pounding right now hearing your story. I think I would have tried to bail off the boat at some point.
I can't swim well enough, so and toward the end, you've got 6 women on a boat for 10 days.
Yeah.
The last night we berthed at the marina where we were going to turn in the boat, and one of the women they gave us 1 key card for the shower stalls, and one of the women went and talked to the guy and said, could we get more cards? And he said, well, no, everybody gets 1 card. And she went, 6 women on a boat for 10 days. And he went, the code number is 1928.
All right. Well, thank you for being honest and sharing your story, Sheila. So I'm going to call on Donna next. And I don't know if I'm doing the same order, but
it doesn't matter.
We'll go around.
So I actually have 2, one from the point of view of being a traveler and one from the point of view of being a tour director. So being a traveler, I had an experience where I went on a tour actually to the southwest of the US, and there were 3 of us who were single, 2 older men and myself. This was about 10 years ago. And the tour company had a lot of meals where there was seating. And so our tour guide every time would be like, I have a table of 4, I have a table of 6, I have a table of, and so people were, the people that were traveling together were like, I'm going to be, put us at that table, put us at that table. And so then, he would get to the end and he would go, well, so who's going to take Donna and so-and-so and so-and-so? Every single time. Like we were these big rejects that they were forced to have on the tour with them. And it was miserable. And, the other people on the tour were really nice and they were embarrassed, but sometimes they were stuck because it would be like they were traveling in a group of 4 and all the tables were 4s. And so it was just really awkward and uncomfortable, and it just really ruined the whole tour.
Yeah.
Because I just ended up, there were a couple of times where we had meals that were paid for that I didn't even go because I was like, I don't want to feel like a big sore thumb. And it was just kind of like, it just ruined the whole thing. And then the other thing, and this, I guess I would love, input at some point on this, but when I was doing a ride along, when I was first becoming an adult tour director, I was on a tour, and it's one of those tours where you can say, if someone else wants to be my roommate, I'll take a roommate because I don't have to pay for the single supplement.
Mm-hmm.
And so these two women had both put that down. So the first hotel, and I'm like the ride along, I'm observing. I'm not supposed to comment on anything. And so the tour director happened to be a guy. And the first hotel, this one woman who was very wealthy and very kind of like, she wanted to have all of her bags brought down every day. I mean, she was just very entitled. And she was with this sweet woman who was a recent widow who was going on this trip. She'd supposed to be going with her husband. He had passed away. And so they were a forced roommate situation. So first hotel, there were some issues. Second hotel, there were some issues because the woman who was so entitled kept grabbing the key to the room first. So by the time we got to the Trapp Family Lodge, she grabbed the key, she went off the coach, and she went up to the room. And the other woman who wasn't sitting with her got off the coach, and I was the last one off. And she was like, I don't know what room I'm in. She was like, I don't know where to go. And she goes, she said, this has happened at every hotel. And she just starts bawling, crying.
Aww.
And so I said to the TD, I said, it's not, I don't want to, I'm observing. And I said, but can we figure out some way to get 2 keys every time so they each have one? Or can we like take them out for a drink and help them get to know each other better? Or can we do something because this one woman is miserable? And he was like, well, no, because she's an adult and she needs to figure it out on her own. And she needs to learn how to stand up for herself. And no. And I said, well, can you at least tell me what room she's supposed to be in? Because she doesn't even know what room to go to. And he told me what room she was supposed to go to. And I just walked away from that. And I thought, this is someone who, for the most part, gets really good scores. I still work for the same company he works for. And he said to me later, I said, how did the tour go? And he goes, oh, everything was great, except that one woman was just whining the whole time because she never had her key. And I just was like, but that wasn't really, I mean, that's in my mind, I'm thinking, that's your fault. That's not her fault. But anyway, so I thought, did people not realize? I mean, I'm like, I don't get it. I was like, I don't understand why he doesn't see this as an issue. But he never saw it as an issue.
Yeah, I will just interject because I love to do this. And like as a tour provider, you're not a parent, a counselor. You're not there to fix them. You're there to give them a good time. And if that means helping them, whatever that means, that's what that means. You're not going to teach a lesson or how to learn, that this is not the time. That's not who you are. And if somebody needs, extra social assistance, as well as if somebody needs a hand up the stairs, that's what we are there to do, whatever that is. I think that is really important to think about. I'm so sorry that this tour provider exists out there who doesn't see that there is it really would have been a small thing. I think, Donna, I hope we can talk some more about what could have been done, because we'll get creative in that. But please, I hope I'm not alone, tour providers, in feeling that we can help, and we should try not to allow our tour travelers feel that way.
Especially someone who has just gone through a bereavement.
Yes.
In another situation, she might have been fine and she might have stood up for herself. But, I mean, I think we've all been through times where we just felt like as we walked, we're just trailing blood,
Yeah.
And it's really sad that just sort of went over his head.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. Was that both your stories, Donna?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure because they were both really valuable. So I'm going to call on David next.
Yeah, so I've had a few things like that. It wasn't a solo traveler actually, but and I've heard this from a few other people, the sense of entitlement that some people will take to a trip. And that, if it's me dealing with someone being entitled, that's fine. But when it starts to bleed into the other members of the trip and ruin their experiences, when it can be really difficult. We had one on a trip this year where, it was just, so our trips are a bit more rustic, right? We're sleeping in a tent that you're responsible for putting together yourself. We're out there on the road. And so there's things and responsibilities that are clearly spelled out for each member. But we just have, in the middle of the day, oh, can you make me this? Can you do that? We have lunch. They just chuck their trash into my vehicle, not the trash bag we have sitting out for them. Just requesting things, complaining about their, that their room has a smaller shower, that, just these things like this in these little cabins we're staying in. Right? And it got to the point where one of the other people on the trip in our post-trip survey apologized on behalf of this person who they thought was being very entitled. It was very funny juxtaposition where their post-trip survey was just a list of things that we can do better next time, the entitled. So it can be difficult, but I also think I know, Cindy, we're not anyone's mother or, teacher. However, we are responsible, whether we like it or not, for the experience that each person has on the trip.
Yeah.
Like that's what we are, experience providers. So to that extent, I do feel it is, if you had a tour provider that's saying who's going to sit with the last person who's not in a group? Well, that was their responsibility to not be a jerk.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, as a tour provider, our responsibility to make sure that one person's personal issues does not, as much as possible, impact other people on the trip. So that was my takeaway is, okay, what can we do better next time so that these entitled requests are not bothering other people and making them feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good input, David. Thank you. Barb.
Well, I am questioning if the entitled people have any clue as to whether they know how they impact the other person, and I don't think they do. So you guys, your tour leaders, good luck with trying to thread that needle.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're speaking on the same page, Barb.
Yes. Some people are just oblivious, and even though I wouldn't be a tour leader, I would be comfortable sort of speaking up, or maybe spending time with the person who's being negatively impacted by the entitled person. I did think of a funny thing where I didn't feel included when we went on a wonderful boat ride out to a glacier. The first time we went on the boat ride, it was rainy and rough weather, so we didn't go very far out. This year when we went way out into the ocean, and I was turning green. I was the only person that was getting seasick from this boat ride. And fortunately, another couple that I didn't know before this, they offered me some medicine. And then between April and the boat captain, they told me what to do to minimize the bumpiness and stuff. But that is something that I learned a lot from, which is to take lots of Dramamine anytime I'm on a boat again. So be aware of the physical aspects and the weather, and be prepared for just about anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good comment, Barb. Shannon.
So I was thinking a little bit about this because I feel like I've seen entitlement on group trips that I've been on. I was really lucky. I feel like on the trip to Spain that I just took, that I just led, I felt like everyone got along really, really well. And I thought that was a real blessing because I think it's rare, especially when you get a group of people who don't know each other. And the majority of them came as single travelers. There was like one aunt and like aunt niece combo, but the rest were all solo travelers. And there was a lot of conversation about how odd it was that they weren't disagreeing. And then on the last night, there was a little bit of a disagreement between two of them, which I thought is what I would talk about because it was really interesting. My tour The youngest woman on my tour was 22 and the oldest was 79. So there's a huge age range. And the younger girl, she enjoyed doing different things with her free time. So the tour, includes some free time. So she wanted to spend more time shopping or have an extra glass of wine or do things on her own. And one of the other girls or ladies, not the oldest, but one of the other ladies was really put off by the way that this girl liked to spend her time. And so they kind of got into a fight on the last night. I actually wasn't present for it. I was just there to deal with the aftermath of it, where they yelled at each other because one was telling her that you shouldn't try and find your own seat right now and the other one wasn't. And it's an interesting concept as both a tour leader and someone on a tour, when you see drama play out and you don't necessarily understand why there is drama over the thing. But it ended up working out. They made up and all was good. But yeah, I think some of it stems from entitlement. I think some of it comes from the fact that, everyone's coming from a lot of people are coming in as a solo traveler who have their own way of life, their own perceptions of what they want to have happen on this tour, the way they want to spend their time, the experiences that they want to have. And sometimes people just get a little irritated when things don't line up exactly with what they're hoping for, or when other people aren't hoping for those same things. I think it can sometimes cause a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of frustration, because the reality is everyone comes into every situation with different expectations and different desires. And I think that some strife kind of can stem from that.
Yeah.
So
I'm not surprised it would happen on the last day, because I do think that also happens to us, right? The end of the tour, regardless of how wonderful it is, lots of times we're exhausted, both good and bad exhausted, right? So you're at your last, the last bit of patience might be used so that, I can get that. Yeah.
Right. I think it was the younger girl was feeling like this other woman was trying to be a mom to her. And the other woman was feeling like this younger girl wasn't utilizing her time in the best way or caring about other people in the best way. But so it was interesting too. They had just both decided to go to this event early. And so I was coming up with the rest of the group behind them, and everyone's just like, oh, okay. Well, there was drama, but they worked it out.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, Leslie, let's hear from you. What do you have for?
And two examples of feeling not included. One is when you go on a tour, and again, you are a solo going into a group, and some of the people know each other and some don't. And for the first night or even subsequent nights, the tour leader says, oh, you're on your own for dinner. You can ask your guide for some recommendations. Well, if you are traveling solo, you don't know a soul. I found that really off-putting. I mean, as I think it was Shannon mentioned it, or Donna, to go up, and especially if people are grouping together, and just sort of attach yourself. I mean, I've done it, but I've seen it done better where the tour leader has put up a list of like 4 different restaurants with a sign up and said, go ahead and, sign up for something. That seemed to work a little bit better. I think there are other ways you could give people choices, but set them up as groups so that the people who are traveling by themselves and don't know a soul already know that they have a group that they can go to. So that was off-putting. The other was interesting. After I had my first knee replacement, and I wasn't able yet to do one of my more adventurous trips, but I still wanted to get out and do something. I found a trip, and it was a bus trip, and had a larger group of people than I prefer traveling with. But again, it was to the Southwest, which was an area I wasn't familiar with. But the problem was, on the bus, they insisted people keep the same spot every day. And I said to the tour leader, is there any possibility that you could rotate us around, especially the people traveling alone, so that we could get to meet other people? And they said, no, this is tour policy. So I found that off-putting, because it didn't give me an opportunity to meet other people. And that's, even if you were sitting with someone whose company you might enjoy, it's still you're there, you want to get out and meet other people. So that was a policy kind of thing. Both of them were sort of policies that I would say don't favor a solo traveler.
Can I add, that's so interesting because I just led a tour and it was a big bus tour and they were supposed to rotate. And so I put cards in every seat. And the first morning they were all getting on and I was saying hello. And I looked up and all my cards were gone, except for a couple of them. And the people were all over the coach. And this one couple was like, that's just the stupidest thing. We took everybody's cards. And I was like, okay, well, that's really interesting. And then a couple people complained because then people wouldn't move seats. And a couple people complained. And I said, y'all can rotate around these people that want to stay as much as you can, but it was interesting to me because I'm a step-on guide. And so I've had tours come to town where they're full, 52 people. And that, like, I had one where the lady opens the coach at 6 a.m. the first day, and they have people in the parking lot at 5 because they want to choose their seat. And they want, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just assign them a seat and rotate. But that, different tour companies do it different ways. But yeah, sometimes your best laid plans, travelers can be like,
I
nope,
just felt that really off-putting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. I think you should rotate.
I'm a fan of rotating also, Donna, and I had a tour where they stopped it as well because I had a couple of members in my group that were anti-rotation and it just sort of deterred it. But April and I've talked about it. I will not let my travelers deter me next time. I will stand my ground. This is how I run my tours. This is what we're doing. You rotate. I also think that we can set expectations, meaning putting that in the notes when we tell them, telling them ahead of time at breakfast. When you get to the tour, you'll see a seat. So it's not a question.
This was a big international tour. Like this is a huge tour company.
Yeah, the one I was on was also.
It's everywhere in all of their literature that they're going to have to switch seats. Sometimes you just have people that are just like bound and determined. They're not going to do what they're supposed to do.
This wasn't the people. This was the tour organizer.
Yeah, these are the people.
Wouldn't do anything to try to shake it up.
Yeah. And sometimes we do have to play our mom card and parent a little too, because it's like, this is how I'm doing it. But it's hard when you've got travelers refusing to comply, right? Whatever that is. I love your suggestions, Leslie, both of them. I love the sign up idea for free time. I'm actually using that. I made a note right away. That will be happening going forward on my tours. I think I love that idea because they're always looking for what to do and we often give them ideas, but I love the idea of getting them sign up so they can go as a group. Love that. Did we get everybody, April?
We asked all the questions for the panelists, so.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a different question this time.
Yep.
So this time we're going to ask you to try to describe the difference between those two. So we can try to figure out, we're problem solving here. It's like, so you told us a story where it didn't, or where it went well, where you had a good experience. And then we talked about moments when it didn't go well. Can you talk a little bit about, and we'll go back around, why do you think they're different? What do you think makes the difference? And is it, I think we've talked a little bit today about things travelers do coming with a different frame of mind. We've talked about some of the things tour providers can do. So I'm just going to ask you to kind of reflect on both answers, and they could be yours or the other person's, and just let us know what you think. What are some of the differences between what made it a good experience and what made it a bad experience? So I think I'm going to go to Leslie. See it that way.
I think probably the responsiveness of the tour leader.
Okay.
Whether it's an issue of flexibility or seeing that people are clumping together and people are being left out, and figuring out how, being sort of inventive, I guess, on the spot to try to figure out ways to deal with it. So, I think it's not being a parent, but it's being a creative tour provider to see issues and then try to make them better.
Yeah. And for us to watch for it, Leslie, right? So that as
it's like I was on this tour in Ecuador, and we were 5 women, and it was a young guy who was leading us. It was a walking tour, and we were 5 women ranging in age, and we were each at a different physical level. And he just went with it, and he let the most active person kind of sail on ahead, and then he would go between the others of us, encouraging us and directing us. And I mean, he didn't have to do that, but he saw that it wasn't going to work to try to herd the group together. So,
So he adjusted
again,
as he went.
there are certain things you can plan for and anticipate, and others, as you said, I think you just have to keep your eyes open, be observant, and especially, I think, for the solo travelers. The people traveling in couples or groups of, 10 from Texas or whatever, they're gonna hang together and whatever, but the solos, I think, do need that a little extra watchfulness.
Yeah, I agree with that. David, do you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely. I'll answer this in 2 parts. The first part, if you're a traveler, I think the absolute #1 biggest thing that you can do is come with no expectations. The biggest thing I see that makes people have a bad time or a suboptimal time is when they expect something and they don't get it. I thought, I was going to get to switch my seat on the coach. I don't get to switch my seat on the coach. I'm unhappy. I thought I wasn't going to get to switch my seat on the coach. Now I have to. I'm unhappy, right? Things like that. So if you come with an open mind and no expectations, the chances of you having a good time are higher. On the flip side, I think, as the tour provider, I can't make anyone have a good time. I can't well, maybe I could make somebody have a bad time, but we're not trying. I can't make anyone have a good time. What I can do is create an environment in which the most people can have the best time, right? So there are going to be people on your trip that might be what I consider a lost cause. They came with a bad attitude. No matter, they could get the best meal in the world and they're going to be upset because it was on Thursday instead of Wednesday. They're just going to be upset. You got to let those people go, and you can't let them spin the rest of the group into their world. When you create an open environment, a welcoming environment, and you foster that group cohesion, you try as best you can to be flexible for your group. Having rigid plans, I think, is a way to disaster, because I might have the perfect trip for Cindy, but Sheila came. And so if I run Cindy's trip, Sheila's not going to have a good time. Just kidding. You guys will probably both have a good time. So as a tour provider, having flexibility, bringing some humor into it, everyone's nervous. You crack that first joke, boom, every single person just laughed at something together. We've now created a bonding experience together. So creating those little moments, having an open environment, not letting people take over, but letting them feel like they're in some way creating their own experience, right? Mm-hmm. So giving them choices to make, not letting them bring choices to you. Like, well, I want to do this is a really good way to derail the tour and the plan. But if you come to them and you say, here we have 2 options, we can do this or we can do this, and people can choose. Now I'm creating my own experience. I'm going to have a better time. So these little things, and a few people have mentioned, these little things you can plan ahead, these little surprises you can plan, these extras really help a lot. And one of the biggest things that I love to say whenever someone asks is under promise and over deliver is also the best way to make everyone have a good time. So this last trip that we just had, I guess it's 2 weekends ago now, there are a bunch of things where we kind of under promised and over delivered, and they're silly little things like a candy bar, right? Everybody, even the guy who woke up on the wrong side of the bed, smiles because he got to have a Snickers bar at the top of a mountain in the middle of the woods, right? And so there's these little tricks and tools we can use as tour providers that can help bring the grumpy people back into the group. It can help the group have a shared experience where maybe people would normally be cliquey. And it can also it'll make you have a better time too. And when you're having a good time, everybody's going to have a good time.
I love that. I made a few notes because David, you always have such great things to offer, shared experience, flexibility, like all of that. And I like the idea of, we talked about giving them options, but not allowing them to have options in that they're not bringing you options. If you offer enough flexibility in your tour, there are options, but they're options you planned. And then you're a little more prepared to be predictable and you know what's happening. Yeah, very good stuff. And it helps if you have open-minded travelers with you. And you're also right.
Yes.
You can't make everyone happy all of the time. It's not going to happen. And we have to let some of those go. Unfortunately. Shannon, I'll let you answer that question too, how you feel about what's the difference between the good and the bad experiences you've seen or experienced yourself.
I think the differences just really boil down to the travelers themselves and their own flexibility with being around people they might be uncomfortable with. So like the women on my last trip, they worked it out pretty quickly. They were uncomfortable, but they had that flexibility to be like, okay, we had a disagreement. Let's just kind of just give each other space and move on from it. But like when I went on that group tour to Mauritania, it was a little bit different kind of a tour. It's very adventure based. We were in the Sahara and it was very hot and very stressful. So I think that might have played into how little patience people had for each other, because in that tour I watched two men blow up at each other to the point where we really thought that they were going to fight. And I was on that tour. I wasn't running it. And it was interesting to see just how angry they got, and they managed to just keep their distance and whatnot. But it really, I think it boils down to, the flexibility of the people going on the tour with their comfort levels when it comes to dealing with other people. Because it is interesting to hear all these responses as a tour provider, because that is the overarching question, is what more can we do for our travelers? Because our goal is to provide the best tour possible. It's to really give you this great overwhelmingly great experience, but we can't control every factor. So hearing these responses, it gives us ideas of like, there are more things that we can control. We can get you an extra room key. We can give you guys space to work it out. We can create settings where everybody's joking and spending time together to kind of mitigate. And so those are all really great thoughts. And I think that, if more little things like that had been done maybe on my Mauritania trip or other things, I think that it could have helped too. So I think it's all very, I don't know. It's very interesting, and this is a really wonderful conversation around travel for both the providers and the people going on the tours.
Thanks, Shannon. Sheila, how would you see those two different? There we go.
Sorry, I've been coughing, so I muted myself. I think it's really important to manage expectations.
I like that.
And let people know before the tour, this is, these are what we're going to do. Here are some of the rules, and rules not being overly crazy, but I was at a group thing last September, and there was a gentleman who was very conservative and went on a rant about things that you really shouldn't go on a rant about when you're in a big group and you don't know that much about the people who are around you. So that's something we can do to manage expectations by letting people know, okay, like you get to choose your seat, or you don't get to choose your seat, or the seats are going to mix up, or whatever. These are things that we can do. If you're a traveler, you can also, it's very important, if you have limitations, please let the person who is leading the tour know. Because I've led tours where I asked, okay, does anyone have any mobility issues? Reasonable question. No, nothing like that.
No.
And I remember at one point telling one of the guides, well, there are some mobility issues. And the woman literally said, no, I don't have any mobility issues. And I was like, you bloody well do. Because she did. And that's not that's certainly not anything against her. I've got mobility issues now. It happens. And I can easily make accommodation for it, but not if I don't know. And the same thing with dietary restrictions. If you're celiac, we can make accommodations for that, but we're not mind readers. So please let people know if there are limitations, whatever those limitations are. It's not admitting that you're not a good traveler. It's not admitting that you're old and decrepit. It's just being, although sometimes I feel old and decrepit, but it's just being, it really does help, because we do want everyone to have a good time. And, we can, especially in a small group, I do small group tours, and we can change things around, but I can't change them around if I don't know.
Yeah. We've had those. Yeah, we've talked about this before, where they don't tell us. And as you're talking,
this rant.
Yeah, no. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, can we ask as a traveler provider? Can we ask that question differently? Right? Because when you ask somebody if they have mobility issues, somebody might think, well, I don't. I get around just fine. But we're going to go hiking in a cave on ice in Iceland. Maybe you have mobility issues. So maybe we can ask the question, and it may not be even physical, if there's anything that they're concerned or anxious about. Maybe that's a better way to, I'm just creatively thinking, like, what could we ask? How can we ask that question in a different way? And that would allow the traveler to feel differently about answering it. And maybe we'd hear more.
Well, I think if you are going to be hiking in a cave on ice,
yes,
you could actually say,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to be hiking in a cave on ice. Is this going to be a problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find as someone who does step on, though, that a lot of times the smaller tour operators, they at least since COVID, they don't read through their itinerary all the way. And so that what happens is they'll come to Chattanooga. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We have a place called Ruby Falls. And they'll show up with 50 people. And the 50 people are all 75 and above. And they want to go to Ruby Falls. And so I'm then on the coach saying to these people, you're going to go like 2 miles below the earth, and then you're going to hike. It's 1.9 miles in and out over rocks, and like I had a lady who was 101 who just had to do it a couple of months ago. And, there were some sweet men, and they literally almost carried her the whole way there and the whole way back. But the person who was actually the tour operator had no idea what Ruby Falls even was. He just knew it was someplace they were supposed to go in Chattanooga.
Oh dear.
So I think, especially now in these post-COVID times, there's a lot that's getting lost in the shuffle, because they're picking up tours or they're going to different areas and they haven't done their research. And so I think that's on the tour operator part, is you have to do your research on what are you going to be asking people to do.
Do your research. I did a step-on tour here in Los Angeles, and first off, the poor people, they were here for 4 days. They came from India. So, they were absolutely exhausted when I got on the bus. And I'm, doing my little spiel, and I hear snoring, and I'm thinking, you know what, go for it. But they had been told they were going to go to Silver Lake. And I and the other step-on person kept saying, it's a nice residential area, but there's really nothing there to see. But they were bound and determined. They wanted to go to Silver Lake. It was on the itinerary. So we went in a large, coach. through Silver Lake. I don't know how the bus driver did it. I thought she was utterly amazing.
Yeah, because I live in Silver Lake and we have hills and narrow streets and there is no place for a tour bus in my neighborhood. Zero.
She was a magician.
No.
But yeah, that was on the company who put it together. And I even said, I'll be happy to give you feedback and help you with this. And no, they didn't.
Yeah, I will say that it's not post-COVID, Donna, because I've had tour travelers not read the itinerary pre-COVID or read emails or notifications that I tell them, or what to pack and whatever. So as a traveler, we would ask that you do read the material that we share with you and that you ask questions if you have them, for sure. That makes our lives so much easier. But I think, to Sheila, your point, maybe more often verbalizing some of this to our travelers will also be helpful, right?
I love the idea, Leslie, what you said about doing a Zoom call with people who are going on the tour, and trying to manage expectations, because, I had a woman who complained because it was raining in London in March.
That's weird.
Yeah, I thought so too.
You should
But
have
that Zoom call gave us a chance to ask things about weather and dress and food and where we're going to stay and all that kind of stuff. That was really helpful.
Oh, yeah.
I think, Barb, you haven't answered the question did you answer the question on how you felt it was different? Did I ask everybody already?
No, you haven't.
I don't think so, Barb.
I was trying to think of something constructive to say, not that I ever felt really unwelcome or anything, but I have a friend who travels a lot with Overseas Adventures, and this goes back to what we were talking about. They have a grid on there for all their tours where they rate the level of difficulty, and then they have a paragraph that tells you what their expectations for your physical abilities need to be. We'll have to walk 3.2 miles and stuff like that. So if you guys could include something like that, and not maybe maybe you don't want to call them rules, but suggestions or whatever, to make people stop and think. Like, I have a pepper allergy and I'm not going to go into anaphylactic shock, but I don't think to mention it all the time. So if I don't tell the tour guide about it, then I need to make accommodations for the food about it. But if you had something where the person could tell you, and as you said, sometimes they're going to say, I have no mobility issues, and then they arrive in a boot or on crutches or something. So
Yeah.
I do have a thing that I take from my Japan tour, and it's a piece of paper, and everyone who wants can get one. And it lists all the things that people could be allergic to, and it writes what that is in Japanese.
Oh, very good.
So that if someone is, so far I've not had anyone with any severe allergies, but if someone was, they could carry that, or I could carry it, or we both could carry it. And when they went to a place to eat, it's like, and that would work.
Yeah, those are the kinds of things. Yeah. Donna, did you answer the question?
I tagged onto her. Just to tag on to what she just said too. I worked for a student tour operator, and they actually had sheets of laminated paper that whenever we sat down for a meal, I would put, like, where their plate was, a thing that said gluten-free, or a thing that said,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. So I knew who everybody was. And then I just put it at their plate as they sat down. And that was a visual reminder for the provider. Yeah, I mean, I think I would just say, the whole expectations thing is so important. And I feel like, as because I'm not the tour provider, I'm the tour director, that a lot of times I get caught in the middle between the guest expectations and the tour provider, because I don't have any I don't have any way to give feedback. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
And so, I think it is really important to set expectations, and it's really important for people to know that, that I personally, and I know you said you don't think since COVID, but I would say one of the biggest issues I've had on people being very unhappy in the past year and a half is the issue of food, because people are not expecting how expensive the meals on their own are going to be.
Oh, yeah.
And so it sets up almost this failure on the tour, because people are frustrated because they're spending way more on breakfast or a bottle of water or lunch than they expect to. And so they haven't budgeted well. And so then they're frustrated. And so it's somehow, you don't want to, as a tour operator, you don't want to make them think they're going to have all these expenses, so they choose not to go on the tour. But at the same time, people have to have a realistic expectation of what kind of costs they're going to incur when they're on a tour. Does that make any sense?
It does, Donna. I've actually contemplated that a few times, whether I should provide a budget, an on your own budget for my travelers. And the reason I haven't is because it's very different, right? It depends on what they do and what kind of, food they're getting and how, but yet I think it's a good idea. I like the suggestion of letting them know kind of what meals, what a meal should cost. Maybe a takeaway
or just
meal.
Just the knowledge that most hotels now don't offer breakfast anymore.
Right,
or if they do,
that
it's a $24 buffet.
Yeah, that would really help. Yeah, I love that feedback. Now, did everyone on the panel get a chance to answer the Delta question? I think we did. We covered that.
I'm here.
And I know that, hi, Deborah, just one moment. I know that April's phone she's having some challenges, so we're going to leave her there. And what we're going to do now is let our guests, Deborah, Lisa, Nancy, ask questions if you have any. You can either ask them directly to someone or just to the whole panel. Deborah, did you want to start? Do you have a question you'd like to ask folks?
Well, no, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what David was saying about expectations. I've done a little solo traveling, and I don't have any expectations for being there. I know I'm going alone, and I expect that I might be alone, but that has never happened. I went to Puerto Rico, and people were just so friendly, and I did my tours and expected to be alone, but I made many friends, and some of them were intrigued about how do I feel about coming alone, that they would never do it.
Right.
I went to Toronto solo, but the tour guide seated us solo people together, which was fine. And the person and I are still friends today.
Good.
And we're planning to do some traveling next year. She was from Australia, and I'm in Texas, and we got to be really good friends.
That's fantastic. Nancy or Lisa, do you have a question or a comment? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are or what you've heard tonight.
I have a comment. So I'm going to do my first bigger one in Morocco next year, but I've spent time with Sheila and you guys and April. And so for me as a solo traveler, I think being on this in a smaller group is really helpful to get to know people and create flexibility. So I personally will never get on a big bus if I can help it. But I think having that opportunity to mingle and mix is really important for the tour operator to try and create some of that. We just got back and I was like the solo small group, but we all got along well. We ate together. April created a lot of opportunities for us to do things. Sometimes we split off and I would hang with one group, another. And so I think just having, even though I was the only solo, there was a lot of opportunity for us to mix and mingle. I was on a cruise with my mom, but even though I was with somebody, they seated us at the same table for the entire, week. And if I was alone, that would have made me crazy because I really didn't like the people we ate with. And you would kind of find opportunities to see other people, but really sitting down and breaking bread for me, I think is a really warm way of getting to know people. So whatever you guys can do to help with that, I think that'd be great. And I totally agree. No expectations. You got to go with the flow. Sometimes you'll be by yourself, and sometimes, you know, you'll avoid the people that you don't like to hang with. Just go somewhere else.
Well, I like that you mentioned like creating social opportunities, because I think that's what we kind of need to do. And I think David sort of touched on that earlier too. Like, we need to create opportunities for people to socialize, not to see things or do things, but to just get to know each other. You know, just like Leslie mentioned her Zoom call where she got to meet, you know, her travelers. We need to, if we can do that for the travelers a little more, they'll probably have a better experience, right? That's, I think, what you're bringing to the table. That's awesome. Lisa, did you have a comment or suggestion or anything you want to share? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. My tour with you, Cindy, next year to Iceland will be the first time I'm going solo on a group tour.
Oh, great.
I usually travel with my twin sister. And so, you know, that's like a lifelong thing, right? We're twins. But the Zoom call thing is, I think, just so important. I'm leaving next week to go on a tour, and my sister's going on that as well. But usually we've always traveled on our own. We're just kind of to the point now where like, we're tired of doing all that. Want someone else to do it. But the trip going on next week, we've had 3, I think, or maybe 4 Zoom calls. So we've had a lot of chance to interact with the other folks and even get to know them a little bit just by what they bring to the table. And, you know, you learn people's interests based on what they suggest. So I think that is, even though I won't be solo, it's just been really, really important. So I see myself doing group tours going forward. So, and I could be with my sister or I could be on my own, but I don't have any, you know, I don't have any experience really to bring to the table on that.
No, and that's good feedback. And we will be doing Zoom calls, Lisa, for Iceland ahead of time, probably a couple, at least for what to pack, because that's a question about weather. And then of course, in a little prep stuff. Because I think those Zoom calls are really helpful. And having that connectivity early on and getting rid of the fear of who are you going to meet? What are you going to do?
I like the comments too. The comment that was just made about letting people know a round idea of what their meal expenses are going to be, because I think in the old days, I think it was more common for all or most of the meals to be taken care of, and that seems to be less now. And so I thought that was a really good call out, especially when you go to a place that's, well, like Iceland. You know, I grew up on an island, so I know what it's like to pay different prices than what people are used to if they live on the mainland. So those kind of things, I think that's a really, really good call out that was made about that. Because that is something that's going to be part of the tour, but you just think you pay for the tour. So you think, well, the big part of it's paid for.
And I think we've really hit a lot today about, you know, setting expectations, managing expectations, and it kind of goes on both sides of the street, right? I mean, the tour provider, whatever we can do to make sure that our travelers are well informed as to what's going to happen, what we need from them to make it work. But it goes the other direction as well. You need to tell us what you need to have a good time, what your expectations are, so that we can help, you know, set the stage properly as well. It is very much a two-way street. I think Shannon mentioned that too. But if you have the right people, it will go so much smoother. if the travelers come with an open mind, you know, eager, communicating, all of those things make it a lot easier for us to do our jobs. I think we've covered everything. April, I don't know if you're still there. I see you're still on mute. Are you there with us?
I'm trying. My computer is like running out of juice quickly. But yes, I think we covered everything, and the feedback has been exceptional. So
It has. And so we're just going to, thank everybody for coming. I'll open it up one more time to see if anybody has any comments, last minute comments or suggestions. We have learned a lot tonight. Very much appreciated that. Does anybody have anything you want to share before we close out?
Yeah, I would love to. So first of all, Lisa, Deborah, and Nancy, thank you for those thoughts and those stories. They're really kind of made me think back a little bit to why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I took, when I was like 24 years old, I went on my second vacation ever without my parents, and I rode my bicycle across New Zealand for 3 weeks by myself. And it was terrifying. I had no idea what to expect. I kind of went with open expectations, and I had one of the most defining moments of my entire life, which was this trip. And so my message to everyone here, you all know, and anyone who may see this, is go travel by yourself. It can be with a group tour, it can be on your own, it doesn't matter. The things you will see, the people you will meet, and all the experiences you will have are going to change your life. And just don't be afraid, because the biggest thing that I've learned on trips like this is that the world's full of people. They're all just like you and me. They want to help you out. I've been picked up on the side of a road by people in a pickup who never met me in their life and who helped me out. And so go travel solo, experience all those things, and just want to thank everybody else here. You've given me a lot of energy for, going into the winter, planning all of our trips for the next year. So thank you all.
Yeah. And thank you, David, because you always provide such great insight. And I have just a quick here to share let me hit share the screen. So this is it from the Travel Collective, and this is our first one of these events. We will be doing more where we have these kinds of discussions. And if you're a travel provider, if you want to join our community, you can go check that out on our website. And if you are a traveler, please feel free to check us out, or there's ways you can support us, because April and I do this out of love for travel and what we do here. So all of this is so we can learn to be better travel providers and better travelers and keep doing what we love, right? April, that's where we're at. I think she's.
no, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's just down to like 5%.
That's okay.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your input. This has been really invaluable. I look forward to future sessions, and thank you all for your honesty and insight. I think we've all gained something, and hope you'll join Cindy and I again on some upcoming panels. So thanks again.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Lovely evening. Bye.